While you might not be able to afford one of these luxury sedans at $100,000, they just don't hold their value. So much so that Paul and I didn't want to just talk about the fact that they depreciate a lot. We wanted to show you. We have each bought a ridiculously expensive luxury sedan that is now crazy cheap. This is one of the two, a 2004 Volkswagen Phaeton, now brand new in 2004. This one spec like this was about $75,000. I got it for $5,000.
This is the 5th generation Quattroporte. In 2005, this was $125,000 brand new, and it was picked up for $10,900. These two cars in 2004 and 05, respectively, represented expensive, luxury, beautiful, like these are the do-it-all sedans. Will all this technology, will the car last? Are they scary to own? Is there maintenance involved that's gonna break you? Is it worth spending the same money on a car like this versus a cheap, brand new econo car?
We didn't shop for the cheapest one we could find. We shopped for one that was within the budget of what we were looking for and seemed to be halfway decent. Now, I've already put a few $1,000s into this one. I had to get the front struts replaced, and those are air suspension, so that was expensive. I did replace the two batteries that are in the trunk. One of them had boiled over at some point and had to be dug out of the trunk. That was also not cheap.
This was conceived by Ferdinand Piëch,
who brought you the Porsche 917, the Bugatti Veyron, and this car, intended to be the best luxury sedan ever made, but was released as a Volkswagen.
He was notoriously difficult to get along with, and he pushed this car through. So why would you buy a $90,000 VW? You could get the W12. As a matter of fact, this was built on the same assembly line as the Bentley Continental GT and the Flying Spur, which gives it some sort of, I don't know, provenance. And this thing is a tank because Ferdinand Piëch threw redundancies at everything in this car. There's 2 wiper motors, there's 2 batteries in this car, 2 fuel pumps. It's like aircraft thinking in a sedan. So everything was redundant. If something doesn't work, some other system will take over. For example, if you turn the key to the left, that'll signal the other battery to use that one to start instead of just using the first battery as the starter battery and then the rest to run the electronics in the car. It needs power. There's so much going on. And I love the thinking, to be honest. Not the most strikingly beautiful car ever, but it's just big enough that people are gonna ask, now, what is that? That's too big to be a Passat. It's not a Jetta. What is that thing? It's huge. Clean lines, and it still works years later. It's just not beautiful and compelling. And the straight lines continue throughout the interior. So just simple, clean lines. You've got very rectilinear shapes everywhere. This matches what every other Volkswagen was doing at the time. So it didn't differentiate itself.
Everything is electronic and has a motor, which means everything can brake. And yet, by and large, everything just works. In fact, in the process of using it daily, a few things have decided to wake up. Initially, the far right vent cover wouldn't ever open. After using it for a couple of days, it decided it wanted to work with the rest of the family. When I first got this car, the massager in the driver's seat wasn't sure it wanted to work. Now it's perfectly happy to work every time. I think half of the systems are just excited to be engaged again. The sunroof shade, forget the sunroof for a second, the sunroof shade itself has a button. And there isn't a way to do this manually. You have to hit the button to get the sunroof shade to open and close. I'm terrified to even try the sunroof itself because if it breaks, this is winter in Utah, I have to have it closed. This is a $5,000 car. What does that mean? Well, it means that there's stuff that doesn't work. There's stuff that's broken. There's a crack in the rear taillight. That right rear window will not go down, and if it does, God help you, because it may never go up.
You were attracted to the car because of the features and the tech, and so you have buttons everywhere and cubbies and knobs, and oh, if you find the flashlight that lives right here, then you know you've got a good Phaeton. The prior owners, they took care of the Phaeton, so they included the little tiny flashlight here. But yeah, the seats that do everything. I mean, how many cars do you know now that have heating, cooling, and massage functions in all 4 seats? The Phaeton had that in 2004.
This is so opposite the Phaeton, it's almost hard to describe. It feels like a different class of vehicle, and yet it isn't. We were trying to find an equivalent car that Paul would be as intrigued by, and when we landed on the fact that a Quattroporte could be bought for around $10,000, we realized he must have one because he has always hated them from afar. Well, now he owns one, which seems like the best revenge ever, but wouldn't you know it, he kind of likes it.
The styling has grown on me over the years. I wasn't a fan when it came out. I want the Quattroporte to be something spicier. But you know, look at the relation to 60s Maseratis and how to make it a long-term, really looks good forever. The tech from 2005 dictated the interior shapes. You had to do something clean. So it's this waterfall instrument panel here with wow, nav. Yeah, it's got a nav screen, if you can believe it.
I love that this isn't just a Quattroporte. It happens to be the Neiman Marcus edition. It's number 32 of 60. Apparently 60 people bought this car in 2005 and paid $125,000 for it, or $125,000 too much. This is a car that is more concerned with having a sporty feel than a luxury feel. If you were a luxury car buyer, I'm sure that was probably surprising to you because you see things like wood and nice leather and comfortable seats. I think it's a luxury car by necessity. I think it is a four-door sports sedan first.
I didn't expect this about the Maserati, and I think that's what a lot of owners and prospective buyers don't understand about the Italian brand. It's not just a personality match to a car, but is it suited to the brand and the image and the home country? Very much so with Maserati. It's fussy and it's beautiful and it's pissed off and it's sensuous all at the same time. The entire concept of the Quattroporte is to drop a Ferrari engine into a sedan. The end. This is not a real torque-heavy engine. I mean, it's 400 horsepower, so you can get going just fine. But 400 horsepower, this is designed to rev hard, 7,500 RPM. This is a Ferrari engine, you feel it. There's also the worrisome aspects about maintenance, but you know, that's a side deal. The engine note alone, the power and the sound is the reason to own this car. And they put the engine as a front mid-engine car. It is truly front mid-engine, so therefore the handling turns out to be surprisingly great for this car.
Plus it is 1,000 pounds lighter than the Phaeton is, and in very much traditional Ferrari fashion, it builds toward redline. Do you remember when BMW did the SMG transmission, the single clutch manual gearbox, and it was awful? Yeah, the Italians said, we'd like to try that too. So this transmission is what they call the Duo Select F1 transmission. Think of it this way. It is early 2000s Ferrari technology paddle shift, which means mostly terrible and prone to break.
It's a twin plate dry clutch, and you got to shift it yourself. I mean, you can put it in automatic, but the car's electronics from 2005 aren't very good. It doesn't like to think very well.
In reality, you can't treat this car like an automatic. You have to treat it much more like what it is, and that is a manual transmission that has a computer trying to learn to shift.
Yes, it's lurchy and too much for most consumers expecting the smooth ride and the seamless gear shifts. That is not the Quattroporte. But if you're open to it and you want it to feel kind of like a manual, that's the beauty about the Quattroporte.
Okay, I'm coming to a stop, so I'm going to put it into neutral as if it was an actual manual transmission. I'm protecting the transmission, Paul. I'm rolling through. Now I'm going to put it into first. It thinks about it. Here we go. Lift for the gear change. Oh, that's terrible sounding. Oh, God. The best thing on the planet is getting it into the next gear, just like, phew. All right, I haven't killed it yet. Oh, that just sounds like it's going to break at any moment. I hope it doesn't. I truly hope it doesn't, but I am terrified right now.
Sport mode. Does a Phaeton need a sport mode? Can it have a sport mode? Can a Phaeton be sporty? I'm in the 04 Phaeton. The only other Phaeton I've driven was when we were shopping for Todd and I had to test drive something up in Seattle, but I've never actually driven a Phaeton in anger. Come on, come on. I like the throatiness. She moves. It's at this point where other cars would take your head off. The Phaeton is just a train. It's just a shove, constant shove. This'll do. 335 horsepower, 4.2 liter V8. It moves more quickly than you would think for a 5,200 pound car. Cars of this size should be heavy and comfortable and they should float and all that stuff. But 5,200 pounds?
On paper, this is not enough engine for this car. However, when I really put my foot to the floor, I'm consistently surprised by how much power this car can find. This engine doesn't have the song or personality of that Maserati Ferrari-derived motor. That's true. But it keeps surprising me with its power output.
You have to be gentle with all of your inputs when you're driving the Phaeton. This is not a stab the throttle and stab the brakes and throw it into a corner. But you're gonna be surprised at the speed. It's an all-wheel drive, huge, heavy sedan. This thing is bomb-proof. No, there's no steering feel. It's the worst. It just wallows. It slithers. Oh, you can feel the weight. But there's a sense of solidity and security, and that is the best attribute about this car. If that's what you're looking for, you can get these really cheap. Ask Todd about cheap Phaetons. Now, money has been put into this car at this point. It's been, new struts and a few other electrical gremlins chased around the car, but now it's running solid, and I'm pretty impressed. I want to take a road trip in this car. I just want to bomb through continents, which is essentially what it was designed to do. You don't feel a thing. I've been on this section of road in other cars, and you're beat to death, and not in the Phaeton. It just smooths everything right out. Great.
It also has adjustable suspension. That's pretty cool. I can go in here and I can turn it from comfort where I am now all the way over to sport. This car finds more capability than you would think when you first start driving it.
The Phaeton, you can adjust the suspension, whereas the Maserati does it for you. It's called the Skyhook Active Suspension. And it's essentially controlling the dampers in response to your engine speed, your wheel inputs, how the car's attitude is on the road. It's controlling the damping. But the biggest thing is it's focused on comfort. It's not really letting you be a sports car, and that's what subsequent generations of the Quattroporte did. The GT, that's kind of where it's at.
This is genuinely better to drive than I thought it was going to be. A lot of modern cars are concerned about no body roll at all. This is not from that era. You can feel the weight shift. You can feel it shift its way in a corner onto the far tires, and then you can shift it back to center, back to the other side as you go through an S-curve. There's a dance to it. It has a constant kind of flowing weight shift if you get on a series of switchbacks. This feels like a Miata compared to the Phaeton. It's so much lighter than the Phaeton. I mean, 1,000 pounds. That's unbelievable how much that translates. This is one of those sports sedans that when you drive it quickly, it shrinks a little bit. It feels smaller than it actually is. This has a longer wheelbase than the Phaeton does, and yet it feels like it's spinning on a top by comparison.
I love the recipe. I love the headspace about the Quattroporte. It's so different than every manufacturer thinks right now. It's just, there's a recipe now that is sort of, all-wheel drive, 8-speed transmission, something turbocharged. That's great and all, but the character of this car and the personality that stands out, and definitely the way it drives, even on winter tires like this, it's still crispy through the turns. There's vagueness, but that initial turn in to the corners, it's really great. It's honestly better than a lot of sports cars.
Maybe it's just the Italian lineage, but the driving experience here reminds me most of the current Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio. Now, it's a cheaper car than this, and it is more designed to be a sports sedan than a luxury sedan, but this feels like a driver's car in the same way that does.
There's some roar and noises about this car that are very sketchy, and I'm not sure if that means something's going to break and cost me a lot of money, or if it's going to be just fine. Are these the noises that we need to get used to?
These old cars have caused us more anxiety than any cars we've ever owned, as far as just wanting them to run, wanting them to share them with you, but we're just not sure if something's going to break again today. The heated and cooled seats, the luxury appointments, the really nice materials. It is your personal respite. You can just get in this car, turn everything like you want it, and escape the world. All of that's still here. Those new cars, sure, they've got Apple CarPlay, they've got more tech, they have the latest interactions, but you don't get in this car 15 years old and feel like, well, this is just terrible. It's still very nice, it's just not brand new.
Once you're going and you're just feathering the throttle and cruising through sweepers like this, I can see the merits of the Phaeton. I can see the merits of actually owning a Phaeton. Crazy enough, but you're gonna have to bring a lot of money for all the maintenance stuff, because stuff will break. Parts will fall off the car, and then you'll have to go chase those down.
Driving this Quattroporte, I see why Paul likes it. In many ways, it feels like we got the car that is opposite of our personality.
The mid-engine handling on this car is what gives it so much flavor. And of course, the engine note, that's probably the best. It's the power and the sound of the Maserati. That is the best parts of this car.
It's just the driver involvement and rotation here that is the big surprise. I think it's going to blow up. I think it's just going to explode spectacularly, hopefully not with me in it, but yikes. All of the noises I've heard in the Phaeton, I'm perfectly calm about them now that I've driven this. The noises in here are horrifying. Thank God the engine note is good. So join us for the absurdity that is these two cars as we go on for the rest of the calendar year, talking about both of them individually and together to see just how stupid an idea this might be, or possibly the greatest ever, and you should do it too.
Since 2007, Everyday Driver has been finding great cars and experiences for real people. Now we're delivering more content to more places than ever before.
Our TV show premieres on the Motor Trend cable channel and can also be found on Amazon Prime. Plus, older episodes are available worldwide on Pluto TV and Vimeo.
Our Top 10 podcast, The Car Debate, takes your questions and helps you find the perfect car.
Whole garages and even a few marriages have improved over 500 episodes, with new ones dropping every Tuesday and Friday.
On YouTube, we cover cars of all kinds, from exotics to haulers and even hybrids, while Nate reviews motorcycles.
Plus, we've got 5 feature films, including unique retrospectives of the 911, the M3, and the Corvette.
And if that's not enough, we host meetups, live podcasts, and even driving trips to Europe.
So thanks for watching, listening, and supporting what we do.